So today, this is a very important topic. It's about the mastery of patience. And what types of patience do we have? We have three types of patience. So number one, that is the endurance that is required to try to fulfill every command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two, resisting every temptation as well as keeping away from all sins. All sins. So we're not talking about kaba'ir here. We're talking about all sins in general, as much as we can. All sins, and resisting their temptation tests, sharfing. And number three, the acceptance of every decree by the Almighty, especially when there are calamities that strike you. From the first shock, you need to accept. Immediately accept the decree. Accept and trust Allah's better judgment. And acceptance does not mean not getting sad, by the way, okay? It just means don't complain, in other words. And keep in mind, that is actually a very important point from our first shock. So as soon as you encounter the decree, you accept. Now, of course, keep in mind, what we mentioned right there, we're talking about the number one. We're talking about mastery of patience. We're not talking about in the middle or at the bottom. No, we're talking about the highest level of patience. In other words, which is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Zumar, ayah 10, where He said, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرُهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ, which means those who will stay patient, which means those who remain patient, steadfast in their patience, they will be granted rewards without limit, which means basically no weight or measure. It'll be so immense, it's basically infinite. There's no limits. SubhanAllah. There's also the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 153, which Allah says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ. So what Allah is saying is, O believers, seek comfort in your patience and prayer, for Allah is truly with the patient. Allah. Now, we've just discussed before that there's levels to patience. And when I said mastery of patience in our topic, I meant the highest level. Which, yes, I am referring to the one where it's the absolute highest. Basically, the degree of piety, the degree of righteousness. You're the highest you could possibly be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't get any higher than this. So in other words, I'm talking about, inshaAllah, of course, Firdawsu A'la, not Jannah. So this part is just my opinion. How do I think how we can really achieve that level? Well, I think, to me, first of all, I don't call them types of patience. I call them pillars of patience. Those three we just mentioned. And I also think the way we can really achieve that is by mastering each pillar. That's why I call them pillars and not types. By mastering each pillar on their own. So basically taking all of them and mastering them. That's how I believe we can achieve the highest degree of piety and righteousness, highest degree of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I actually mentioned that in my book as well. The whole book is about achieving Firdawsu A'la more than about achieving Jannah. So in other words, it's really about how to really dig deep and become the highest level you could possibly be with Allah's permission, of course. In case you were wondering, by the way, the book is free. It's online. It's basically in the TikTok bio. There's also the ayah that I love so much, one of the most beautiful ayahs in my opinion, because it really tells you as well what Allah tests with very commonly. And that's Surah Al-Baqarah again, which is actually one of the best surahs, and it is one of my favorites. So ayah 154 all the way to 157, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. So what Allah is saying is, we will certainly test you all with a touch of fear, famine, loss of property, life, crops. Give good news, give glad tidings to those of you that were patient. He also says, those that when they were struck by a disaster or a calamity or a test, they say, surely to Allah we belong, and to Him we will all return. That's what the patient of us say when there is a disaster that strikes us, or a test or any of that. In other words, we accept, as we said in the whole pillars of patience thing. And that's not just it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, they are the ones who will receive Allah's blessings and mercy, and it's they who are rightly guided. It's they of us who are the truly righteous, the ones that are truly guided, the ones that are truly pious. And in my opinion, the ones who will achieve rewards without limit and enter, bi'Iznillah, of course, inshaAllah, Firdawsu A'la, not Jannah. So whenever you're tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember, as we said in the whole true purpose of life, this life is a test. So whatever you're going through, even if you're actually just happy and your life is going great, you're still being tested. You're being tested with happiness, because it won't last. And if you're sad, depressed, that's also a test. By the way, even if you have cancer, that's a test. If you don't have muscles, that is a test. You go to the gym and you start forming some muscle, that is a test. Every single thing is a test. You have anxiety, like me. I actually have severe anxiety. Or, well, it's actually borderline severe anxiety. It's not moderate, and it's not also very severe. So, borderline severe is social anxiety. That's a test. PTSD, that is a test. Every single thing you can think of is a test. Even your whole personality is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanallah. And of course, it's up to you to try to rectify those flaws in your personality, to try to become the perfect version of yourself, to become the highest degree of piety, righteousness you can be for Allah's sake. And of course, to achieve the possibly highest level of Jannah, which is Firdawsu A'la, inshaAllah, for us all.